Well, it's about that time. Welcome to those of you that made it. I understand that some places in Connecticut in particular lost power, and some people are calling in by phone apparently, but I just want to reassure everybody that we're hopefully recording this and we'll be posting it on the Beaver Institute website in the management section. So uh, for people that can't see it or there's something you want to revisit, it will be available. So I guess we'll get started. Thanks, as I said, for being here, and thanks to the Norfolk Conservation Commission, who is co-hosting this with the Beaver Institute. I'm Mike Callahan of the Beaver Institute and president, and I'll be doing the presentation. So here we go. My background: I started working with beavers a little over 20 years ago on a volunteer basis. Then started a business called Beaver Solutions here in Western Massachusetts, and to date I've resolved over 1,700 beaver conflicts. So it's a lot of that experience I'll be sharing with you today. A few years ago, I started a nonprofit called the Beaver Institute, and that's the hat I'm wearing today. And the purpose of the Beaver Institute is to help spread information about beavers and how to best manage issues, to help train people, and just raise general awareness. So thank you for being a part of this webinar today. I'll be talking about 40 minutes or so, and then we'll have 15 to 20 minutes for questions and answers. So let's start talking a little bit about beavers, so you have a basic understanding of the animal. Their scientific name is Castor canadensis, and they're our largest rodent. Full-size adults are about the size of a medium-sized dog, 40 to 60 pounds. So they get pretty big. They just eat vegetation. They'll live off the bark, inner lining of branches, and they also eat aquatic vegetation like water lilies, cattails, also ferns, grasses. A lot of people think they eat fish, but they don't. Otters do, but beavers don't. One interesting thing about beavers is they have teeth that have an enamel on the outside that is impregnated with iron. So it makes the outside of their teeth orange and the inside is white, just like our dentin. And what that does is when they chew on wood, the iron impregnated side wears slower, so it creates a self-sharpening chisel for their teeth. So it's a kind of a pretty cool adaptation that allows them to always have sharp teeth in order to cut down trees. They have a lot of other adaptations that make them particularly suited to the water. Their fur is very thick and waterproof. They have two sets of lips, so they can actually swim with a stick in their mouth and not get water in their mouth. Their eyes have a second as a membrane, so when they're swimming underwater, which they're not using their eyes much, it protects their eyes. Their big paddle feet, you may have seen, helps propel them very well through the water. They don't generally use their tail for propulsion, but they will use it as a rudder to help steer. And their ears and nostrils can close to keep water out. So they are very well adapted to the water, which is why they do what they do. One pair will mate for life, and when you see a beaver pond, sometimes you'll see more than one lodge, but there's only one family in there and only one breeding pair. And the female will generally give birth late May, early June, once a year, and anywhere from 1 to 6 kits, which is kind of dependent on the food supply. This is important because when beavers get 2 years old, they're sexually mature, but there'll only be one breeding female. So the 2-year-olds move out of their parents' pond and they try to find a territory for themselves where they can have a mate and set up their own home. So they're very territorial. They won't let other beavers outside their immediate family move into their ponds. So that's one time they will get aggressive. If another beaver comes in their pond, they'll chase it out because they're trying to protect a limited food supply. They will teach each other, the older ones teach the younger ones how to build dams, but there's an innate ability for beaver kits, small beavers, to build dams. They're just not very good, but they do get better with experience and with observing their older family members. They're social and they groom each other, which makes sense evolutionary wise, if that's a word, because especially in this climate, beavers don't hibernate, and so they're staying in a small, dark, enclosed lodge all winter long with all their family members. So with a lethal weapon of teeth, they better get along. A little bit about the history of beavers. There's been probably almost 36 different species. There's only 2 that exist now. This is one of the ones that's gone. It's a giant beaver. I just throw this in because it's interesting. This beaver was around for 1.4 million years until the last ice age, about 11,000 years ago. And as you can see, it weighed about the same as a big black bear. So fortunately, our beavers are, as you know, less, 40 to 60 pounds. I don't know if I'd be doing this work if these giants were still around. So about 7 million years ago is when our beavers first came to North America. It's believed over the Bering Strait, and so as you can see from the map, they are very adaptable. So they spread out through all different kinds of habitat, limited really only by the real desert areas, and in southern Florida, alligators, crocodiles, probably. When Europeans first came here, there's estimates of upwards of 200 million beavers that were in North America, but beavers were extremely valuable. So their pelts, I should say, and they were used as currency, and so the trappers explored North America, and the beavers very quickly were decimated, over decades. As you can see, 10,000 were taken out every year in the 1620s and 30s. So with this unregulation and just trapping and moving further west to find new beavers were almost extinct in North America by the early 1800s. Furs went out of fashion because they were using the beaver fur primarily for top hats for men. It made the best felt that knitted together well, but that went out of fashion. And then a lot of the farms where New England had been almost completely cleared started to revert to forests. So with the habitat returning and without as much pressure from human trapping, beavers started returning beginning of the last century. But then, by the 1950s, there were more problems as beavers built dams in places where humans were trying to do things with the property. And so the state would relocate them to areas where they weren't, because they were recognized as, and rightfully so, as a keystone species, which we'll get into later. And so due to their value ecologically, these beavers were moved to areas where there weren't beavers. But that ended in the 80s because it ran out of places to put them. So when problems occurred, the beavers were typically trapped and killed. More recently, there's been effective ways to manage flooding problems from beavers using piping and fencing, and that's really taken off in the last 20 years, and I'll go into a lot of that in this talk. People sometimes ask where beavers live. They think they live in a dam. They don't. They build lodges out in the water like this right here, It's hollowed out inside, and they build it up above water, and they'll live in that, or they'll live in the embankment. They'll tunnel out an area inside the embankment. The lodge typically has 2 underwater entrances, as you see in the diagram, so they can escape if an otter or some predator comes in through one side. And over here you see this depiction of a food cache in the winter. Beavers will store sticks at the bottom of the pond so they can eat the bark all winter long once the pond freezes solid and they can't get to fresh food. And understanding that's an important part of understanding, why beavers do what they do and how to come up with good strategies to deal with it. Apparently, some beavers have it better off than others. This was in New York. I thought it was funny. But this is a typical beaver dam, built out of mud and sticks and rocks, so whatever the beavers can move. You can even see there's some man-made lumber in there, but these dams can turn a small little stream into a big ponded area, as you can imagine here. This had been a stream. There's 2 dams, so it's spread the water way out, and it's holding back quite a bit. So why do they do this? Well, they do it because they've evolved, over these millions of years to avoid predators. When there were wolves and mountain lions, saber-toothed tigers, you name it, the water offered them protection. So that is hardwired into their DNA to build these ponds for safety. And it also makes it easier when they cut down a tree for food or for building materials. They're doing it for the safety of the water, and they can move the branches easier. And here in New England, when the ponds freeze, they want the water deep so the food sticks that they've stored don't get encased in ice. Here's a dam in Kent that is bigger than most. This is probably 8 feet tall. Typically, beaver dams are anywhere from a foot to 3 to 4 feet. This is unusual, but they'll use whatever's available and build up their structure as best they can. Here they found an old pickup truck, and they use that to anchor the dam. And you can see where they went right through the cab of it with sticks, and it made a great start for their dam. These dams inadvertently have a lot of other benefits not related directly to what the beaver's trying to do. These dams create ponds or wetlands, and these wetlands are often referred to as the Earth's kidneys because they have a great ability to filter out and clean our water. So when water comes into one of these beaver ponds, what goes out has less nitrogen and phosphorus or heavy metals or other runoff pesticides or things. And by slowing the water down, turning a stream into a pond, any sediment that's been eroded from upstream can start settling out. So there's less suspended solids in the water too. Another benefit is slowing down this water and storing it will let water seep into the ground, which recharges our ground aquifers and maintains the water table for surrounding vegetation, and will drop peak flows from storm surges, increase base flows because it releases water slower. So in droughts, there's generally more water downstream for fish and other things. And the sediment when streams are badly eroded, these dams can help to restore and bring back the normal water table. But what really hooked me thinking about working with beavers 20 years ago was when I learned about biodiversity in beavers. Because as I mentioned briefly, beavers are a keystone species. And what that is just like a keystone in an arch. If you remove that stone, the whole arch crumbles. Well, biologists have taken that phrase for the animal kingdom, and a keystone species is a species that has significant impacts, positive impacts on other species. So, and if you remove that keystone species out, meaning in this case the beaver, then that whole ecosystem collapses and all those species suffer. You know, for example, the EPA estimates I think 43% of our endangered species rely on these wetlands at some point in their life. So, but it's not just endangered species, it's all biodiversity. Beaver ponds become a mecca for just a magnet for all kinds of plants, insects, mammals, fish, you name it. So it's really cool how if we can keep this one beaver, or this one species, the beaver, on the landscape, then there's so many other benefits for biodiversity and, you know, water quality, other things we talked about. So, and that's because they've been around so long. So, you know, Native Americans referred to beavers as little people because they're really only second to us as far as altering the landscape to suit their own needs. And after millions of years of doing that, all kinds of species have adapted and evolved to rely on those changes. So that's basically why they're so instrumental. But it's not all good news as far as beavers go and people. You know, as I said, we butt heads with them because they're next to us as far as altering the landscape for their own needs. So when beavers do that, problems occur with us. That could be anything, you know, loss of valuable trees or any property or farm that was built in a low-lying floodplain area. So, you know, beavers are restricted to low areas with water, but we often have built things there, and that's when trouble can ensue. So different ways to manage those problems. Obviously, one is tolerance. If we can live with it, fine, then we don't have to do anything. That's the easiest. But that's also probably the rarest instance of what we can do. We can breach the dams if there's a flooding problem, but beavers are very good at rebuilding, and usually within a night or two, it's right back where it was. So that's really a short-term solution because, you know, they built this whole dam. And, you know, you take out, even if you take the whole thing out, they'll just build it back. So that's not really a good option. And beaver dams, you know, and wetlands are protected. So you can't do that unless you have permission. In Connecticut, the Inland Wetlands Commission oversees, you know, work in wetlands. Real quickly, I'll talk about trees because that's actually a common problem. Cutting down trees or flooding of trees. Flooding of trees we'll talk about later as far as controlling water level, but for cutting down trees, you know, beavers, as I talked about with those teeth, can cut through an amazing amount of wood and take a tree down for food and building materials. So quick and easy way to protect any tree is just this 2" by 4" mesh fencing. It's pretty cheap and inexpensive, takes a couple minutes to just put a loose cylinder around the tree. Obviously you're not going to do this to a whole forest, but select trees that are either ornamental or are large and would pose a risk for taking down wires or hitting a house or something. It's a good idea if beavers are around to do that. Another method to protect trees, which I don't use because it seems kind of messy and you have to redo it, is mixing paint and sand and matching it to the color of the tree like they did here in the Sierra Wildlife Coalition. And that actually, I'm told, works very well to deter the beavers from chewing on trees. There are some thin bark trees you wouldn't want to do that to, but that's another option. And there are examples of different ways to protect trees on the Beaver Institute website. So I won't spend any more time on that, but feel free to go to beaverinstitute.org and there's a whole section on tree protection. Nuisance trapping is another method, traditional method, as I mentioned, of dealing with beaver problems. And so there are some places where, in like this instance, where a beaver dam flooded not just a yard, but there's actually a septic system under that water. So we can't that's not good for anybody. So that is a situation where there wasn't room for a beaver pond without the human development being negatively impacted, and unfortunately that means that the beavers have to go there, so meaning they'll be trapped out and the dam taken out to reduce that water, because that's just not a tolerable situation. In my experience, when I'm called to beaver problems, 3 out of 4 times we can do something that's a long-term solution, but about 1 out of 4 times I will recommend trapping. I do it as a last resort because we lose the benefits of the beavers, and it's illegal to relocate beavers or wildlife. There's actually some good reasons why animals shouldn't be relocated. So it is necessary, but unfortunately, we do have better options most of the time. Here's an example of a Hancock trap. It's a live catch trap. These were used back in the day to relocate beavers. They're still used out in the West Coast where they don't have many beavers and they can relocate them. And basically it's like a spring-loaded suitcase that will capture the beaver live, unharmed, and then the beaver can be, if it was a place where you relocate them, you can relocate them, but once you catch them, you have to kill them, so usually shooting is the way it's done. Conibear trap is a trap that is very effective, and it's set underwater. It's like a big spring-loaded mouse trap, but this is 12 inches by 12 inches, and these wires here, when the beaver swims through, it's set in an area where the beavers typically swim, and then the spring will break their back. So that's another type of trap. So I do want to spend more time on water control devices and resolving flooding problems. So typically they end up being, when feasible, they're more cost effective and long term and humane and environmentally friendly than removing the beavers. So there's 3 basic types. Pond leveler pipes are used for freestanding beaver dams, and then the other 2, culvert fences and fence and pipe systems, are very good for man-made structures that you're trying to protect, like a road culvert, a spillway on a man-made dam, things like that. So we'll start first with the pond leveler. That is a pipe that's put through the beaver dam, and the height of the pipe, the highest point is at the dam. And since water seeks its own level, water will pour out the pipe whenever the pipe height is below the pond level. And so we can set the pond at whatever level we want by setting this pipe higher or lower in the dam. There is a limitation. Out here, we want to have a minimum about 3 feet of water. So if it's a situation where 3 feet of water at that point, it's usually 40 feet long of the pipe, if that depth is going to cause still a flooding problem, then this wouldn't be a good option. But for situations where somewhere in the pond we have 3 feet of water, we can put the pipe in. And the reason we want that depth is that when the beaver swims by that caging, we don't want the beaver to feel the water going into the pipe. So I'll show you a picture. This is as we're launching it on some temporary pontoons. And so the intake of the pipe is in the middle of this cage. And these are typically 5 or 6 feet in diameter and about 4 feet high. So when this is out in the water and the beaver swims by, even if the pipe's flowing full blast, they can't feel any water out here. And since there's no discernible water flow through the fence, leaves or sticks that float up against it will float away just as easily because there's no water pressure holding them in. So we sink that out in the deepest area we can find, and we dig a trench in the dam here down to the level where we need the pond to be at, and the pipe goes through that trench, and then we cover it over with the mud, put some fencing here so they can't mess with it. Here's a pipe that was built by a woman who's trained with the Beaver Institute in Connecticut, Diane Honer, and she built this and installed it through a beaver dam under a walking bridge, so that the trails and the bridge were protected from flooding. And that's working well. So those pipes work well so long as you have the water depth. Road culverts, though, are the most common problem we see. Probably 60% of the problems that I see in my business, Beaver Solutions, is related to beavers damming up road culverts. And that's a blocked road culvert can quickly cause the water to rise and create a very serious flooding situation or even sinkholes. So we don't obviously want any of that stuff happening. So one way to protect the culverts from beavers damming is using a culvert protective fence. And the typical one we call a Keystone fence is shaped like a keystone or a trapezoid. And the reason we shape it like this there's three reasons. One is obviously it makes a big perimeter. They have to do a lot more damming than if they were just plugging up the culvert there. So that extra work makes what was the easiest spot to dam, because they see this road bed and the culvert to them is the hole in a otherwise good dam. And with a little bit of work, the whole roadbed becomes a dam. So that's why they want to target these culverts. But now with the fence, it's a lot more work, and it's going to be easier to build a dam upstream or downstream, so they'll leave the culvert alone typically. The second reason these work is that if the beavers try damming, they'll typically start at the head wall here where they can feel and hear the water moving the most. And then the fence forces them away from the culvert, which discourages them because they're damming away from where they want to go. They want to go across. And then third, if they real determine they keep damming, what happens is that the opening gets wider and wider that the water's coming into, so there's less movement of water through the fence, less sound because they're getting further away. So all those factors combined make these fences usually effective with about a 95–96%, even with the beavers there, after about 7 years still. And typically they only require about an hour worth of cleaning per year. So they're very low maintenance and very effective. And they'll keep the water at the design level of the culvert or spillway. Here's an example of one we put in recently for the Highway Department in Sharon. And here there were two culverts, and you can see that's keeping the beavers away and discourage them from, they were damming up these culverts all the time. They have a dam up here and a huge wetland, and so we're just keeping them out of this little area, and they still got all that. Now sometimes you can't make the fence wide as a trapezoid because you got a narrow channel like in this picture, but you can still discourage them by just making it longer. Typically on the trapezoid we want the length of the sides to be 12 feet at least, and the fence mesh is 6" by 6" mesh, steel mesh. Here you can just make it longer and contour it to the stream. We want it to be surrounded by water, because if it was too close to shore, then they would just dam from the shore across. We want them to come all the way in. One thing you see here is this opening here, and that's a wildlife passage for turtles and beavers and other animals, believe it or not. And it works well in most cases. Beavers have an interesting characteristic where they typically don't want to go up on land with damming materials and then back down into the water in the culvert to plug a culvert. But as you can see in the video, they have no problem and no hesitancy about using these passageways to travel without sticks. So it's a nice way to help reduce roadkill by allowing animals, and we've caught all kinds of animals on camera going through this. Here you can see a little one going. But beavers do learn, and look at what it does now. It took a ride. I thought that was pretty funny. It said, "Why should I walk when I can get a ride?" So this particular culvert, every night the beavers are going up and down, upstream and downstream, and even sometimes during the day, and never once tried plugging a culvert. But you can't say never with beavers, because in my experience, about 1 out of 5 times they will bring sticks through these passageways. So we always like to look at a week or 2 after we put it in and make sure they're not doing that, and we'll block it off if we have to. Another way to protect culverts, which is actually my preferred way, is this fence and pipe flow device. We recently did one for the town of Bolton and the Bolton Land Trust, and the beavers had plugged up this big culvert here. The town cleared it out for us, and then we installed this large fence with passageways on both sides and put a pond leveler through it. What we're trying to do is allow the beavers to dam on this smaller fence and recreate a pond, but limit the height of the pond to where we set the pipe. So this won't flow until the pond rises up to the lip of this pipe, and then water will start pouring out and through an unblocked culvert. And having this damming way out here, if say this tropical storm we just had was actually dumped 10 inches of water on us, all that water would go up and over whatever they dammed and through an unblocked culvert. And this fence would actually help hold back floated debris to keep the culvert open. So it actually is a benefit during big storm events. And again, the limitation of this is that we have to have a spot where we can allow the water to be 3 feet deep out where the intake is, so that the beavers don't plug this up. Where they can dam on this all they want, but the pipe will keep the water at the desired level. Here's another spot in Sharon. This had a big watershed, so we had to use 2 pipes and put the pipe in. And the beavers have started damming around this, and the water's rising up, and it's, I believe, spilling out now. It's been in for a couple weeks. And you can see there's a beaver lodge up here. They have a path because they were plugging up the grading that was on here all the time. But they will still have a nice, healthy, big wetland to live in. This is for a homeowner in Lakeville, where we protected the culvert with the culvert fence. And then up here, you can't really see it, we put a pond leveler through that dam. This was threatening a driveway, that was threatening some flooding in the yard. And so far, you know, sometimes the beavers will be real determined, and if they do dam on this fence, which is possible, we'll extend the pipe. But so far we haven't had to. So site selection is critical as far as knowing where these devices will work and where they won't. As I said, about 3 out of 4 times these devices will be feasible, but some of the situations where they're not, if you have a very high flow in the stream, then you just might not be able to get enough pipe capacity to control the water level. And so we always assess the watershed area before we recommend putting in pipes. Or like I mentioned in that picture, if there's a septic system or something else that's been put in a floodplain, then you know, we're not going to be able to allow beavers to dam there. Drainage ditches, another one. When you have a man-made channel, it creates just an infinite number of places beavers can dam. And I learned that the hard way. Pipe a dam, they built another dam behind it, extend the pipe, built another one, and had to give up because you just chase them the whole length of the canal. And typically water supplies, people will keep beavers out. They can carry Giardia or Cryptosporidium to parasites that contaminate the water, but so don't wading birds and all sorts of animals, and people too. So success rates, real quickly, when we trap, we're usually going back to the same place every year or two. As you can see here, even after 6 months, 1 out of 10 spots has beavers again. And within 2 years, 3 out of 4 spots have beavers again. So it just becomes a never-ending management option. And graphically, you can see here's the success of the trapping over time before it has to be trapped again, versus the flow device. When that 1 hour or less of maintenance is done per year, these devices have over a 95% success rate over time. So the fencing may have to get replaced after, depending on the fencing you use, 10 years, but it'll work all that time and control the water where it needs to be done. For those who are curious, approximate prices of some of these devices, for what we charge would be at Beaver Solutions. Trapping can, if you're licensed, you can, obviously it's not going to cost anything. If you hire somebody out of season, then it may. So a little more about the cost. The Beaver Institute did a really lengthy study, looked at 20 years of data from the town of Billerica, Massachusetts, and their beaver management program, where we managed 55 sites. And 12 of those sites are trapping sites and 43 are flow device sites. And you can see there's a significant difference over the 20 years of the per year cost of the management of each site, which so by using flow devices, we saved the town $180 per site times the 43 sites. So almost $8,000 a year that the taxpayers were saving in this town. This town had a lot of beaver problems. Then that doesn't even factor in, by keeping those beavers around, we estimated there was an extra 380 acres of wetlands that were created by the beavers and maintained by the beavers that wouldn't have existed if we had just removed the beavers. And there's different estimates for the water, the ecological services of a wetland per acre, but $5,000 is typical. So it's almost at that rate, giving the town $2 million in ecological services of water purification, water storage, not to mention the biodiversity and other benefits for free, just by choosing to coexist with this Keystone animal. If anyone's interested in a copy of that study, which was published in 2019, it's on our website in the research section. Now I want to finish up with the Connecticut Beaver Initiative, because this is a unique program just for Connecticut, and it came about because the John A. and Jane T. Wiederhold Foundation partnered with the Beaver Institute, and they largely funded this program, and we're very grateful for that. And what this program does is we're training professional flow device installers in Connecticut, and we're looking for more like nuisance. You have to be a nuisance wildlife control licensed person for Connecticut to install these devices, and we want to train as many of those who are interested. And thanks to their support, we're able to give up to a 90% discount on the tuition. So that's nice. Another part of the program is offering grant money for property owners, whether it's a homeowner or a highway department or conservation commission or a business. Anyone with property that's having beaver problems can apply to the Beaver Institute for funding for installing a flow device. And so again, thanks to the Wiederhold Foundation, we are able to administer that and help, financially help people and organizations that are having beaver issues. We just started this program this spring. Here, the towns that we've funded grants for projects, and there's more in the pipeline. You know, we're going to keep giving these out until the money's gone. It's not a lot of money, so if you know somebody with it, or you have a beaver issue, go to the Beaver Institute website, and you can you find the information as far as how to apply for the grants. Another part of the Connecticut Beaver Initiative is we are trying to raise public awareness about beavers, and this webinar is part of that. Just teaching people about, you know, the value of keeping this animal around. And we're always looking for other organizations in Connecticut that are like-missioned and we can partner with. So with that, here's the website for more information on the program. And if you are so inclined and want to help us out, we're Beaver Institute's an all volunteer organization, so we're always happy to have more hands on deck. So, in summary, we went through some of the basics about beavers, how they're well adapted to water and how they need this water to protect themselves and survive the winter, and how they were gone for so long, and then we built all our infrastructure, and then more recently they've come back, and so that's one of the reasons there's a lot of conflicts. And we went through what those conflicts could be, as well as different ways to manage them. And finally, the Connecticut Beaver Initiative, which I'm very excited about as far as helping out towns and property owners. And so, there's more information on the website than I can give here. So please, if you get a chance, take a look at it. So with that, what I'm going to do is John's going to hand me some questions that people have been submitting. So far, just got a couple questions. That's from Martha K. Would you explain no tolerance zones in more detail? No tolerance zones are, as I mentioned, areas where we don't think flow devices will work. Well, why won't they work? Well, typically because we have built things that can't be flooded, and those things were built low in the floodplain. In the ideal world, there would be no such thing as a no tolerance zone, and we would have all our roads and our houses and whatnot on higher ground and not in floodplains. So, but we all know we don't live in an ideal world, and if it's my basement getting flooded or the beavers, I'm going to protect my basement. And so that's what, when flow devices don't work, we'll recommend trapping for. Let's see, another question was from Martha. Would you discuss what types of traps are used in Connecticut? I have a trapping license, but I don't do the trapping myself. So I'll leave that kind of up to people who have more experience. But what I can tell you is that, I showed you Hancock traps. Those are the live catch traps. The conibear traps are the kill traps that are set underwater. And in Connecticut, snares can be used, and snares will grab the beaver's leg and then drag the beaver down to the depths of the water where it can't get up for air, and it'll drown them. Now that particular method, it was outlawed in Massachusetts, where I live, not too long ago, and with good reason, because the American Veterinary Association has euthanasia guidelines for animals, and it's very clear that it says that drowning is not a humane way to kill an animal. So, and I can relate to that because when I was a kid, I had nightmares about drowning. And so for a beaver who can hold its breath for 15 minutes or more, you can imagine how terrifying that would be. So But anyways, enough of that soapbox. All right. Any other questions, John? Oh, John's signaling me. I think there is another question. You can say what it is. What is it?
Do beavers build dams where diagramas fish need to swim upstream to spawn, thereby blocking the fish's life cycles?
Okay. Oh, that's a good question. There's a question about fish, and beaver dams. And do beaver dams block the migration for spawning of andromatous fish like salmon, herring, shad? So that's a complicated answer, but in general, the research over the last 20 years, most of it which has been done by NOAA out on the West Coast, has conclusively shown that the fish do better where there are beaver dams. Now, in a very low flow situation, those dams can block the movement of spawning fish. And so there are many places where people will go in and breach the dam and let water out so the salmon can continue to move upstream. But in general, we want to keep those dams around so that they serve as great nurseries for the juvenile fish. These ponds create all kinds of food, algae, insects, whatnot for the fish. So the studies have shown that the juvenile fish grow faster and larger, and they have a higher survival in streams where there are beaver ponds. In fact, the head of NOAA's salmon restoration, Rob Walton, has said that if they could have more beaver dams in Oregon, then they would be able to delist the coho salmon from the endangered species list. That's how big of an impact beaver dams can have for fish. You know, a lot of people see, okay, they're turning the stream, which was cold water, into a warm pond, and that's going to be bad for spawning. But immediately downstream of the dam, the water is there's gravel for them to spawn in. So the overall effect is for more cell-mounted fish. And having waded out in many a beaver pond, I can tell you there are times in the middle of summer where if I'm wading out and it's chest deep, I touch the surface of the water with my hands, it can feel hot. It's actually hot. And my feet can feel, the water will feel cold. And that's how stratified the water level temperatures can be, which the fish take advantage of. So that's kind of a long-winded answer, but I want to throw in one more thing that'll make it even longer, which is I developed with people out in Washington a pond leveler pipe that allows salmon to pass through, and we've shown in the prototype that it worked. And right now we have trials going on up in Newfoundland, as well as there are some out in the Pacific Northwest, and we've got fish pit tags and radio telemetry to monitor the fish. So those studies are just starting, but it looks like, you know, even when we need to protect something with a flow device, we should be able to do it in a way where the fish can get through. So any other questions, Sean? All right, I think that's it. Thank you all, and check us out on the website. Thank you for your attention, and on behalf of the Norfolk Conservation Commission, as well as myself and the Beaver Institute, I want to thank you guys for your attention. Have a good night.